answering most of the questions. And so my goal for tonight is to, I know that this week is the last week you're coming into now, the 4th week of the gut healing. And so a little bit at the beginning, I think we should just sort of talk about finishing the month of gut and where do you go from here for the gut. And so I think we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to, my goal for today is to really cover toxins and detoxification. So because that's what you're coming into next week. So for those of you finishing up gut, you're probably starting to think about detox next week. And actually it just occurred to me that I don't have food slides up, but we'll talk a little bit about that, because as you might be noticing, we've been pulling as the stages of this program have gone on, the foods get a little more restrictive. So for the detox program, we take out a few extra things. Not that many things left to take out, but things like the high histamine foods like the shellfish, and it might be really pretty much it. What else comes out, Melissa? I think we really get stricter on things like caffeine and alcohol. And so as you're moving into detox, but you've been on an elimination diet already, I know, pretty restrictive, but there'll just be a few more things that we're going to tweak with the food as you're moving from this week into next week. And so that's really my goal. I think you're all doing great. It seems that there aren't, the feedback I'm getting and what I'm seeing on Facebook is that everybody's doing great and feeling better and moving along nicely in the program. And so this is your chance to ask me questions. Thank you. Coffee, beef, chocolate, oranges. Right. So it's just a list of a few more things. Right. And so what about shellfish? Didn't shellfish, we take that out with detox. So have they taken that out yet, Melissa? You can type the answer to that. Taken them out already. Okay. Why chocolate and oranges? Good question. So oranges and chocolate, oranges are because they're a high histamine food. And when we move into detox, sometimes the detox programs are very, are sort of created for people who really to remove every possible kind of grouping of triggers that we could think of. And so we take out the high histamine foods. And so oranges is on that list. And so you really can eat any fruit except no oranges. And of course the high sugar stuff came out. In terms of chocolate's also migraine trigger. Histamines are high migraine triggers. And so chocolate is on that list. And so we take out chocolate as well. And detox programs are excellent for people with migraines and have headaches. And so that's why the foods on the list are sort of for sort of all the triggers and as a whole grouping, and that's why. I know that I have to say that chocolate, if I eat too much chocolate, it does give me a headache. Doesn't mean I don't eat it in little bits, but if I don't eat it for a while and then I eat it, chocolate's has a lot of very active compounds in it. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump on in. We're going to get started and talk about toxins. And assuming we have time today, we're also going to talk a little bit about infections as triggers for autoimmunity. But we'll see where we go with that. Okay, let me share my screen like we do. I'm going to get myself all set up for this, and I'm going to pop this slide deck up. And let me get this set, my whole checklist of things to make everything get set up good for everybody. So there's that. And then I get I know the chat box is somewhere over here. Let me just do that for a second. There's the chat box. I'm sticking that down here in case I need to see somebody talking to me. Hey, Susan, wake up. We have a problem. So that would go in the chat box down there. Although Melissa and I have a secret bat line because I have my phone, so she can always text me if there's a problem. So we call it the secret bat line. Okay. I hope nobody else lost connection. So I'm going to keep going. I see somebody posted that they lost connection. Hopefully that's not going to be the case. Let's see. Oh no, people are there. Okay, we're good. All right. So, okay, thank you. All right, good. So what I wanted to start with then is I just want to talk about the gut for a second, because you all are in your 4th week of the gut. And by now you're probably getting sick of taking all those packets. But those gut packets are really, what's in them is really important for you. And the herbs that are in there. So I sort of gave a little summary of what you've been doing and what you're finishing up with right now. And so the Heal My Gut protocol in those packets, or if you're doing it on your own and not taking the packets, but the way that I direct the treatment is to use herbs to treat the dysbiosis. And so they're usually an herbal blend of berberine, black walnut, uva ursi, artemisinin, with some oregano. And so we put together sort of an herbal blend that's going to sort of clean the weeds out of the inner garden. If you think about the gut and your gut microbiome as 100 trillion flowers of different species all in your gut, lining your small intestine and your large intestine, 90% in your large intestine. These flowers are really, we need them for our immune system to work really well. And often under certain conditions, which you've come to understand what they are, I know, but I'll repeat them in a second. But under certain conditions, you can get an overgrowth of the flowers. You can get the flowers in the wrong place, so up in the small intestine where they don't belong. You can get weeds in the garden, which I think of as bad bacteria, yeast, or parasites, or and these microbes, all when they're growing, the weeds are in the garden, or you have too much of the flowers, or they're in the wrong place. It's all a condition called dysbiosis. And for the past 3 weeks, and for this week as well, we have been treating dysbiosis. I mean, that's basically what we're doing. These herbs, this whole herbal blend that you've been taking, are weeding your garden and pruning the garden, pruning and weeding. And what this does is it helps rebalance the ecosystem. It's helping to rebalance the allowing your good bacteria to flourish and grow in a healthy way, um, and by clearing the weeds out. The thing that the reason why we also don't want weeds, in addition to the fact that they muck up your own bacteria, is that the weeds in the garden, or this condition called dysbiosis, damages the intestinal lining and causes a leaky gut. And leaky gut is the foundational one of the foundational problems that can trigger autoimmunity and damage the immune system. And so in order to treat leaky gut, we have to treat the cause of the leaky gut, which for most people, this dysbiosis is part of the problem. It might not be the only problem, but it's a big part of the problem for most people. And so the herbs you're doing and you're finishing up this week are treating the dysbiosis. You've been taking the glutamine, the strengthened glutamine powder, which is for healing the lining. You've been taking, for the probiotics, are influencers that actually help the whole ecosystem and your good bacteria grow. And the probiotics will also help with the leaky gut and heal the tight junctions. And also in the packets are digestive enzymes, because the digestive enzymes help not only you digest your food, but digestive enzymes so it's smaller pieces and less likely to cause damage in the gut. But also digestive enzymes can help with the biofilms in the gut, to break things up and help treat the dysbiosis. So this has been the whole protocol you've been doing, and you're finishing up, a week now. And so there's always, I see that question, and there's always the question about how do you know if your gut is healed? And so really, we often follow a stool test, but the way you know your gut is healed is if you feel better, right? So if you're progressing, if you have gut symptoms and the symptoms are getting better, if your food sensitivities are starting to improve, your gut is healing. But this is something that for us to continue to talk about, and that's why I wanted to bring that up as you're coming into your 4th week of the gut healing program. What comes next, right? And so because you're not all healed after 4 weeks, so you have to, we call it finish what you started and continue. And actually, I think that is my next slide. Yeah. And so we call it, and I can come back to the other one about persistent gut symptoms, but I call it, how do you finish what you started? What are we going to do? And actually we're going to be definitely spending time with this in the very last week of the program. So we have a ninth. Last year we did 8 weeks for this program, and we decided to add a ninth week so that we could specifically focus on transitioning out and what to do next, and how to keep healing and how to keep going. But in general, your gut, the healing the gut takes a while. It's like a minimum of 6 months. I tell people 6 months to 2 years to heal the leaky gut, depending on how severe your autoimmunity is, how severe your food sensitivities are, how severe your inflammatory symptoms are, if you have arthritis or any other kind of inflammatory condition. And so you're going to be gauging it by how you feel with your systemic symptoms, because the leaky gut is what's triggering the symptoms you're experiencing. And so the way that I look at this is, I think that I generally tell people it's 1 to 2 years of probiotics and glutamine, so it takes a while. If you have very mild health issues, then maybe you could do 6 months to 1 year. But for the majority of people who are motivated enough to sign up for a program like this, you all have some significant autoimmunity or immune concerns. I think it's important to just accept, have the expectation that you're looking at 1 to 2 years of probiotics as well as glutamine. Now, in general, one round of this 30-day gut treatment in the long run over these next 2 years is not going to be enough. Usually I repeat the 30-day box that I give, that some of you might have used, or if you did a 30 days of your own protocol, I repeat it every like 4 to 6 months. And so most people do 3 or 4 rounds over 2 years. And every time you do it, you just move everything forward. And I like to do it that way. I like to use the herbs and then let the body sort of come into balance, stay on the probiotics, stay on the glutamine, let the body sort of ecosystem balance, stay on a really gut supportive food program, which you all know what that is, which is plants mostly, and stay on and maybe cultured and fermented foods. And you're going to stay on a gut healing program. And every 4 to 6 months, do another round of herbs, and your gut is slowly going to move in the right direction. And then you won't need to do, then maybe you'll do the first now, and then 6 months from now, and then another 6 months, and then maybe it'll be a year after that, and maybe it'll be every year or two you might need to do some gut work. But the problem is that the gut wants to sort of, it needs the gut gets damaged and goes back to its old ways very easily. And so you have to, in order to keep your gut in balance and keep your ecosystem in balance, there's long-term things that you need to be doing to keep it there. And unfortunately for most of us, we fall off the wagon. And so sometimes the diet gets a little bit, too much alcohol or too much sugar, or too much animal food, or too much stress, or something acutely traumatic happens, and you go through a very difficult period of 3 or 4 months where you have a lot of stress. Just something happens, a family member gets sick, or my age, we have aging parents, and so stuff happens. And so if you go through a really stressful, tough time, the most influential thing, the two most important lifestyle behaviors that influence your gut health is, number one, food, and number two, stress. And unfortunately, we can't always keep stressful things from happening. And so under times of really intense stress, the gut microbiome can get out of balance again, and you might need to retreat yourself. So that's why, I think for those of you who have autoimmunity or have arthritis, especially, because there's such a big gut connection with arthritis, the chances that you're going to have a relapse where you're going to need to treat your gut again because you're susceptible to it is likely. And so there's treatment and retreatment, but it's not all the time, but it's going to be needed. And especially if you're an autoimmune person and you know that the gut is your central issue, when you go through all the self-assessments that I have in the book, for example, and we're going to move into toxins in a second, if you're like a high toxin load person from your assessment, and if the gut is your main, if you've been a gut person your whole life, like I was, that's a big issue for you. So I know I sort of rambled on about that, but I wanted to point that out in terms of finishing what you started. We are going to do this again the last week, And it's going to be a focus for the last week because it's really important to help you. I have a little bug in my bonnet actually about that, about like all my colleagues who do these intense therapeutic plans and then leave people hanging, and they don't really know how to continue or how to help it sort of go deeper and repair your terrain and the ecosystem. So I see there's a question about eating the same food and increasing your risk of a food sensitivity. During this time when you have a damage to your intestinal lining and your gut is still leaky, you do want to rotate foods. You are at an increased risk for developing a food sensitivity. But this is where taking digestive enzymes could help because you'll digest the food a little bit better. But also, this is where food rotation comes in, and there are certain foods that are just known to be difficult, like that trigger sensitivities more easily, and most of those are the ones you've removed from your diet, which is why we're going to encourage you to reintroduce them slowly. And if you find you're a little sensitive to them, you're not going to want to eat them all the time. I mean, maybe the reaction will be very minor, and you'll think, okay, maybe I'll eat it like, once every week or every 2 weeks and just have it 95% out of my diet. And in that way, you can prevent it from developing back into a big sensitivity. But I think that when you have a leaky gut, you have to be very mindful of not overeating the same food every time, all the time. And I know that can be hard sometimes, but you do have to do that. I just want to go back again just for 1 second. For those of you who right now still have persistent gut symptoms, um, we've done all the different kinds of elimination for you. We've figured out, and now you're doing the gut treatment. What I would say is that if you find that your digestive symptoms are actually finally starting to feel better, taking all the herbs, this is your last week, and I would still recommend that you stop and pause and do the 2 weeks of the detox program that with us. But you might want to circle back and continue doing more herbs, right at the end of this program. So I'm just putting it out there for those of you who are in the 4th week of the gut program. And I just want you to take stock and be mindful and just, a self-assessment. How did you feel on the food plan at the beginning? And if that didn't really help you, but this is helping you, taking all these herbs, and you're only 70-80% better and you have digestive symptoms, you're that person who should probably circle back and do another month even of the herbs when you finish the detox at the end of this program, to circle back and just continue on with some herbs. But the good news is we're a guided program, and you have Melissa and you have me, and we, when you're not sure what you should do, we will help you decide. And then last but not least, at the end of the day, we did figure out a way to help people get stool testing if anybody wants to do that. At a distance, I can't order it for you, but our nutritionist can. So you can do a consultation with our nutritionist, and she can give you a stool test, and you can see if there's anything in there. Sometimes there's something else, like a candida or something, which sometimes we'll use prescriptions for, or parasites. So that's that final answer. So working through the gut, and we're here to help you. So that's that. All right, I want to move into detox and toxins. And so a lot of times just even the word detox is a little confusing. What does it mean? And so, well, when I'm talking about detox and in the context of our work that we're doing together, what detox means from in a functional medicine kind of world is targeted supplements that help you lower your toxin load by supporting the detox system in your liver. So it's really liver loving, liver support. And the liver is also called, hepatic means liver. So hepatic, which is just liver biotransformation. And all that means is it's the biochemistry it's like a conveyor belt that goes through your liver. And the conveyor belt has enzymes that transform the toxin and renders it harmless and prepares it for excretion, and then sends it out in the bile and then into your gut, or sends it out into your bloodstream, and then out to the urine. And so the liver is a processing plant that processes toxins. It also processes your hormones. So it has to detoxify and excrete your hormones like your estrogens, which can be an issue for some people with autoimmunity, that they estrogens, they can be um, can cause flares in autoimmune symptoms. And so making sure your estrogens are detoxing well is another piece to this. Not so much what we're going to go over today, but just the idea that it's not just toxins that get moved through the conveyor belt of the liver, but really all of your, every medication you take and all of your hormones and all of your body's chemicals, like that's the place, that's the clearinghouse. And so if the liver's, we can think of it as almost like congested or doesn't have the tools it needs, or there's too many toxins that have been incoming for too long, the liver can get can fail to do its job well, and the conveyor belt can slow down and the toxins can pile up, right? So you can just have slowing down of clearing, and then the toxins will pile up in the body and cause damage. And so the problem is, oh, actually, I put this slide in here because it was just my reminder. So what are we doing today? Like coming to talk about toxins, it's my reminder to just to remind you and to remind me that what we're doing is we're looking for all the triggers. So how do you develop an autoimmune condition? This is like the why toxins matter kind of question. In terms of why we're talking about toxins today, because to develop autoimmunity, there's usually there's a genetic predisposition, but genetics isn't destiny. And but something happens that causes damage to the immune system. And so there's usually a combination of antecedents, we call it, where there's some damage happening that's been setting you up for a triggering event. Something triggers it and it tips up, it's a tipping point, and you end up with autoimmune, where the immune system just attacks your own tissue. The damage to the immune system can be chronic, sort of ongoing, sort of setting you up. And that's where toxins come in as well. Toxins can cause ongoing low-grade damage, so can infections, and sort of get you ready for a triggering event, as well as what we've been working on so far up until today, up until this next week, are terrain issues. So food, stress, gut health. These are all, food, stress, gut health are all sort of the underlying immune terrain. These are all things that have been sort of really critical factors for how sort of keeping your immune system working and healthy. And so indirectly, if those things are out of balance, indirectly you're setting yourself up for being a triggering event, because those things are out of balance. And so you want to have sort of your whole terrain working well, and then you want to make sure you're clearing away any kinds of triggers. And so triggering events can be the things we're going to talk about today, especially toxins can be sort of ongoing damage, and then a big toxin exposure can be a triggering event, or you just reach a tipping point where it's just too much. But infections are also big triggering events in somebody who has already some damage to their immune system, which is why a lot of times somebody comes in and they'll get Epstein-Barr or they'll get Lyme, and they end up with a big autoimmune problem, and somebody else with the same Lyme won't. Part of that reason is because there's already other things at play that have caused some, perhaps, immune damage that has gotten them set up. So we, from our perspective, we're working on all these things with you, right? So we're working on the food, we're repairing your immune terrain, we're helping you with stress, we're getting your whole foundations really resilient, so that if a toxin comes along or a virus comes along, you won't get sick, right? And that's why, especially, we added that 9th week to this program, so that we can help you sort of continue to work on your terrain. And terrain takes a long time. That's the 6 months to 2 years. You can't just fix your terrain like that. The immune system takes some time to heal. But we're looking then to repair the terrain. And today I want to talk about toxins, like I was beginning to do. And I also, next class, because we didn't really talk about trauma and stress too much in these sessions, because managing stress and understanding trauma and the relationship to health and the immune system is so critical, and something that I'm very passionate about. I think, and so important for long term, for your life, for the rest of your life. We're saving that to the last sessions, because I want to talk to you about how you're going to live your life now, being mindful of those things, because it's critical for your overall immune health. All right, as promised, here we are with toxins. And so I think we're all in agreement that we're toxic. And so, well, at least I don't know if you are, but I think most people understand that toxins are just, we're bathing in toxins now. We have toxins in the air, we have toxins in our water, we have toxins in our soil. It's now in our food. The more vegetables you eat, the more lead you get because there's lead in the soil. I mean, you can't get away from toxins. Um, and so it's funny. I was teaching at a conference last week, and then she was actually a GYN, I think a GYN urologist or something, which is a weird combination. I forget what her specialty was, but it was a physician. And she came up to me and she said, well, how can you talk about toxicity or treat toxins? Which toxin is it? And I said, this is a lot of physicians. They really, they want to know what the toxin is. Like, tell me the toxin, tell me how to test for it, and then tell me how we should, and then we can treat that toxin. And instead, I really want you to think about this concept of a toxin load. Okay. This is not just about which toxin is it. Now, with heavy metals, we do look for mercury and lead. And so there is association with mercury we're going to talk about. So there are some specific associations. And we can measure for your PCBs and the plastics and the pesticides. So things that are on this slide, we can measure for these. And certainly mold and mycotoxins, we can measure for all these things. But at the end of the day, and we can treat for a lot of them. Some of them have really, actually most of the mold and the mercury have their own treatment. But for the most part, I want to come back to the idea of toxin load, because the goal of supporting the liver for detox is to turn up the liver, like it's like turning up the volume and helping the liver do a better job clearing out everything. Because whatever's going on, if you have too many, we have so many toxins. I think the CDC did a study of cord blood and they found 262 toxins in all the babies' cord blood. I mean, we have just all these chemicals are in our bloodstream. And at some point, we reach a tipping point where it's just the over total toxin load is just too high for us to manage. And if you imagine, it's like a cup that's spilling over, right? Hmm. And it's like a cup that's sort of, you're filling up the cup and then it just eventually spills over. And so it could be, so it's all those toxins together that are filling the cup. It's not just one toxin. And so if your cup's full of all these other things, and the liver is just struggling to metabolize and clear all these out, you eat some fish and they've got mercury, and you're not going to be able to get the mercury out because the mercury is going to live a lot longer in your body because of the congestion in your liver from all these other toxins. You see what I'm saying? And so you must, uh, and so you must get think about all the toxins and not just only target one. And the other way I want you to think about toxin load is that at any given moment, as we're sitting here, I think of toxin load as a net. On one side is all your exposure. So it's all the ways and all it's how long you've been exposed to different toxins, what the magnitude of the exposure is, how often you've been exposed. So it's all your exposure is here. And then how well you're managing that and clearing it out is here. Now, some people have terrible genetics, and I know I do. I've done my detox genetics, and my glutathione system, which is responsible for clearing out metals, is terrible. And so, I know I'm going to have struggle, and so my clearance is already handicapped, right? So some people have bad genetics. Some people, so in keeping up with all your exposure, you want to have a lot of antioxidants, a lot of nutrients for the liver. So you have to be eating, and maybe you need to be taking supplements, but it's how good a job you've done clearing out the toxins as you're going along is on the other side. And if your exposure and your toxin load is just greater than your ability to keep up with it, you see, well, I'll go this way. Your total toxin load ends up high, and you end up with too many toxins as all in your body of all different kinds. And so we want to help you clean up your world and get rid of all the toxins you're exposed to while increasing your liver's nutrients that it needs to clear all these toxins out. And especially if you're handicapped like I am, you need to be even more mindful about eating even more greens and cruciferous vegetables and more antioxidants, because if genetically you could be handicapped and more susceptible to accumulating the toxins. And so, yeah, and so we just have toxins really everywhere. And so there's this concept called, I'm sorry, I'm covering it up, oxidative stress and cell damage. It's called oxidative stress. That's that word. You'll get these slides tomorrow. But oxidative stress is that then because what happens when the toxins, you have a high toxin load and they're all running around amok in your body, they're triggering the release of free radicals. Remember free radicals? I talked about it the first week. I love free radicals. And no, they're not the hippies of the 60s. um, but the free radicals are activated oxygen species that are released from the combustion. They're released when your mitochondria make energy, but they're also released when your immune cells are attacking the toxins, and they're released when there's irritation in your system from toxins. And so one of the ways that uh, toxins damage you or hurt you is they can end up in your tissues themselves, causing damage in the tissues, or they can cause immune reactions and a release of a lot of free radicals, which then the free radicals damage your tissues. And so it's like a runaway train of this thing we call oxidative stress. And it's just pro-oxidation as opposed to antioxidants, right? We know what antioxidants are. So nature gave us so many great antioxidants in food to keep putting out the fire. Embers, fire, embers, fire, free radicals, put it out, put it out, put it out, put it out, and help the liver detox. And so that's why the long-term Finish What You Started Forever program has to include eating all these foods. Otherwise, you won't be able to eat in such a way to keep your toxin load down. So I told you about toxin load, right? So you'll see this in your slide then. You don't have to write that down. And so it's a net balance between your ability to clear it out and how much you've exposed and how well you've nourished yourself. Now, for those of you with a terrible gut, if your digestive system has been, was not, if you've had a damaged gut and you're not digesting and absorbing your food very well, you might have been eating all the foods that you should have been, but you haven't been absorbing them well. And so that could have hampered or inhibited your ability to clear out your toxins, even though you were eating the food, which is really such a bummer, because you think you're doing everything well, but you're actually having this high toxin load because of your gut. So a lot of conditions associated with excessive toxins. Toxins end up in fat cells. We now know toxins are associated with obesity. There's a saying, sorry. There's a saying called, the solution to pollution is dilution. And I always think about that about body fat. Because your fat cells, toxins are all fat soluble. And so you'll end up absorbing the toxins into your fat cells. And so the fat cells are, let's say, this big, and the toxins go in and they get this big and they swell. And they sort of accumulate fat because they're trying to dilute all the toxins that are in the fat. On the opposite side of that, if you lose weight, so let's say in the past year, you lost 25, 30 pounds, and there are people who definitely, I have people in my practice who have recently lost a lot of weight, and we just actually had someone in today, we were just talking about that. And what happens is, as you lose weight and the fat cells release their fat, they release a lot of toxins into the body. And so that's why sometimes people lose weight and then you hit a plateau, because those toxins have spilled out into the body and sort of mucking things up again. And so you want to do perhaps a little detox support to help clear them out so that you can continue to lose weight. We do a lot of our detox programs as weight loss programs for this reason, because you really have to help excrete the toxins to help the weight loss. But definitely, as you can see, autoimmunity, we know there's a lot of studies looking at lupus and ANA positive rheumatic diseases with different kinds of toxin exposure. And Hashimoto's and mercury. And so And so for autoimmunity, this is really important. Now, you might not, sometimes it's hard to know whether or not you have a high toxin load, and toxin symptoms from toxicity are tend to be those non-specific things that people go in, like this guy in this picture, oh, I'm tired, I have brain fog, I can't really think, I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm just sluggish, I have headaches. And so detox, so high toxin load will do all these things. And toxic load is also associated, like I saw here, the balance and tremors, Parkinson's disease is, there's a lot of concern about toxins in a certain area of the brain. And so toxins are just really important for those symptoms that you're not sure where they came from. And when you go through, and you're going to all see this because next week you're going to start your detox program, these are the kinds of symptoms. While yes, we're hopeful that you're on this path towards repairing your immune system and lowering your autoimmune antibody numbers, where I'm hoping when you repeat them with your doctor in a few months, you're going to see a change. But I think the most important thing to be looking for when you do the detox program with us are these kinds of things. And you might have already noticed with the elimination diet and the gut treatment, you're already starting to have, feel better, have more energy, less brain fog, and just sleeping better, and memory, and maybe even headaches. But now that you go the next step to the detox program, I want you to really be mindful and pay attention about those symptoms, and to see if those improve over the course of the time that you're doing the treatment. And sometimes, and also to point out that when you're doing a detox program and you start revving up the liver and start moving the toxins through, sometimes you'll feel a little worse before you feel better. So day 3, 4, or 5 of the program, like as you're heading in towards the end of the first week, sometimes you feel worse, and you might start getting notice that you're feeling a little headachy or a little bit achy. And so what we always, and Melissa will talk you through this, but if it lasts more than a day or two, or it's really uncomfortable, like really severe symptoms, we usually just say cut the dosage of the supplements down, cut it all in half, or take a full day off completely and taking any of the supplements, and just slow the whole process down. And that usually means that you have a very high toxin load, because if we're starting to mobilize the toxins and you're not able to excrete them very well, and they just have no place to go, and you feel worse. And so it's a sign that that you probably do have a high toxin load, and that for you, that you might be the person who should continue detox at the end of this program. So just like I said, there might be some gut people that need to circle back and go back and do some more gut work. Well, some of you might want to continue with the detox program. For me in my office, if I determine someone has a high toxin load, and I think that's really an important part for them, I usually do 3-month detox program. Now, it doesn't mean you have to stay on the food plan that whole time, but it means you might want to take the liver shake every day. And it's not actually a lot of supplements. It's the liver shake with the 2 pills and some fiber, and then some magnesium if you're not pooping. And the reason why you have to make sure you're pooping, which is why we throw magnesium into the program, is because I keep talking about the liver, but really the last stage of detox is the gut, because the liver is going to dump all those toxins out of the liver through the bile and right into your colon. Actually, it goes into your small intestine. And if you're constipated and you're not moving that out, it's going to pile up and you're going to reabsorb the toxins. So this is why we've done this program in this order. You have to do the gut program first, make sure you're moving your bowels really well, and then you can go into detox. This is why we add fiber to the shakes, and why we offer, for those of you who need it, to take magnesium citrate at bedtime, so that we make sure you're pooping. If you're not moving your bowels every day, let Melissa know, and we can recommend something else in addition to these things to help you go. You can go up to 5 magnesium citrates at night if you need to, but we really need to make sure you're moving your bowels, because if you're not, we risk doing too aggressive a detox, and the toxins won't get out. So this is all part of, I'm going like this because everything has to move through. It has to move through the liver, and it has to move through your gut. And so that's sort of, and that's why we do the heal the gut work first. That's one of the main reasons. And so when we talk about detoxification and biotransformation. That's the word behind my picture. Biotransformation. So this is just talking a little bit about the liver, sort of the liver pathways or the liver conveyor belt. Because what happens is it moves to the liver, it gets the toxins are being, the compounds like a pest, an herbicide, or organophosphate, organochloride, they're converted, they're sort of they're transformed into a different, they go from fat soluble to water soluble, then they're chelated, they're, well, we call it conjugation, and then they get excreted. And so it's a whole conveyor belt. And so this is my picture of the conveyor belt. I'm going to move myself over this way. And you can see here that this is phase one. So here's the toxin. It goes into the liver and it gets transformed from nonpolar lipid soluble, and it starts out as fat soluble, and it's converted into water soluble. That's the whole, there's a lot of energy expended to try to get the toxin to be dissolvable in water. And look at all the vitamins that are needed. Okay, these are all these reactions that happen. You make tons of free radicals while you're doing this, which is why the liver needs so many antioxidants. And so here's, in this whole middle box here, this is the antioxidant protection, that you need all these antioxidants to actually protect you from the free radicals of the work that's being done in the liver. So you need tons of B vitamins, you need amino acids, you need glutathione, you need good fat, and you need a lot of minerals, you need your antioxidants. I mean, the liver needs so many nutrients, which is why giving you targeted liver nutrients is so good for helping you remove toxins. And if you if you start the detox process without enough antioxidants, you can generate more free radicals and have secondary tissue damage. See, this is a free radical, something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, is the name of these sort of intermediaries. And then you move into, after phase one, you move into phase two in the liver, which I said was conjugation. And so that's where protein comes in. These are all amino acids that then are attached to the toxin, and it's pulled out into the bile. Mostly the bile takes all the, we call them endotoxins, but yeah, it's passed out through the bile. And so this is where the protein comes in. And this is where methylation comes in. That's the B12 folate. And B12 folate are needed throughout this whole process. And so this is why we want to make sure that everybody's getting everything that they need. And so this is just proof. I'm trying to really, my goal here is just to show you that this is a real thing. There's a real science behind why we're recommending the supplements that we recommend. But even though you're going to do this detox program, and you might want to stay on some of these supplements for 3 months, but in the long run, and then I'm back to my whole little pitch about finishing what you started, in the long run, I really want you to live a life that's liver supportive, and how are you going to do that? You're going to eat a lot of vegetable. I mean, this is plant-based eating. You have to, really try to eat as much organic as you can, which is hard for most, the majority of Americans can't find organic or afford organic everything. And so this is where you'll go to the Environmental Working Group website and really focus on like the dirty dozen, and the worst offenders are the ones you have to make sure to only eat organic. Otherwise, you're just adding more and more to your toxin load. And so you want to eat a lot of plants. All these colors here, these are all antioxidants. Every time you see a color, it's a phytonutrient that has antioxidant power. So I call it liver-loving food. And so in the long run, as you're going to move into the detox phase, but then you're going to move into the rest of your life after this program, the long-term goal is to eat in a way that's liver and gut loving, right? That's the long-term way to have good immune health, because we want to have your foundations of your immune system and your ecosystem and your terrain all humming along beautifully. And to do that, you have to try to avoid toxins in your food. You remember everything that you ate this is the Michael Pollan quote, everything you eat is what the other animals were fed and the plants. So everything you eat is a sum total everything you eat, there's an intermediary, especially animals. They're in the middle. They're eating something else. So everything you eat is a total of what all those plants and animals were grown with and fed. If the plants are treated with pesticides, herbicides, they alter your gut flora. That's the glyphosate Roundup thing. I don't even have any slides on glyphosate, but glyphosate is well studied, not only about promoting cancer, but it damages your tight junctions. If you're eating food with Roundup in it, you're going to have trouble healing your gut, and your tight junctions and leaky gut is going to continue to be bad. GMO foods can damage the gut lining. And so, we want to be very mindful and eat in a way that's supporting, a low toxin life. Liver loving food is very, very rich in antioxidants. And these are all the leafy greens and the kale and the collards. Cruciferous vegetables are like a superfood, as you all know. There are supplements that are just extracts of these superfoods that are great for the liver. There's compounds in here called sulforaphanes in all the cruciferous veggies, which are the most amazing powerhouse for detoxing your estrogen pathways, as well as all toxins in general. We're almost done, and then I'm going to answer some questions. I see there's some questions over on the side. You're going to support your antioxidants. And so here's the other thing. There's something called an antioxidant system. You're eating antioxidants, but you actually have enzymes in your body that are antioxidant, that have a lot of antioxidant activity. And these enzymes also need a lot of minerals to work. And they need their own nutrients to work. And so you want to be supporting all of them. It's minerals, amino acids, vitamins. That's why plants are so good. You need to eat a lot of plants. See, I'm not here pushing supplements. I mean, I know there definitely are supplements with this program, but they're very targeted for treating in a very therapeutic phase. So this is the whole therapeutic intense work where we're doing all these supplements. But my goal really is to teach you how to eat and how to live your life so you don't bring the stress in, so that you won't need to do these therapeutic programs all the time, right? All right. So in addition to, and I know Melissa's does a lot of this in her coaching sessions, in addition to the work you're doing to help your liver detox system, to cleaning up and lowering your own toxic load, you need to go through all the exposures in your world and look at the water, the cleaners, the pesticide, just look at everything you're using in the house, and where you might be getting exposure in your world. Looking at your water, looking at water is really important. Making sure you check your house for mold if you think that's an issue. Just looking at all your habits. Are you an artist? Are you having exposure there? Do you ride horses? Do you play golf? There's a lot of pesticides and herbicides on the golf course. It's one of the most toxic places to recreate, and so there's ways to mediate that, and we try to help you with that, but we need to help you clean up your world. So eating the detox diet's key, but finding and removing all your exposures. Now, one word about mercury. Actually, I don't know if I have mercury there. So one word about mercury. So mercury is associated with autoimmunity. There's mercury in silver fillings, and there's mercury in fish. In my experience, when I test people for mercury, and I take them off fish completely, their blood levels will go away. And I've had that experience like many, many times. And so I'm really convinced that in an ongoing way right now, you might have old silver fillings, which I advocate taking them out, and I'll talk about that next. But mercury, all fish has mercury in it. It doesn't matter. Some have more. Some fish is really high. So you absolutely have to look at the mercury fish list, the high mercury list, and eliminate eating swordfish and and the big tuna. Those all have really very high levels of mercury. But my experience has been that some people think they're doing good by eating salmon and other smaller fish 4 or 5 times a week, and their mercury levels are very high. Farmed salmon has mercury, and it has other toxins. It's only the wild Alaskan king salmon who are vegetarians that don't have high mercury levels, and they're not easy to find. The wild sockeye eat other fish, and so they have mercury. And so mercury's in all the fish. And I generally, for my autoimmune people, or if you've tested your mercury and it's high, There's a urine test that we use to look at toxin load of mercury, but you can ask your doctor to check. If you eat a lot of fish, you can ask your doctor to check just your blood levels. And if you're a big fish eater, you might pick that up in your blood work. Um, but the way that I do it, I saw Melissa posted that, is with an overnight urine collection, and you take chelation pills before you go to bed, and it scavenges and looks around your body for all the mercury, grabs it and pulls it out into your urine, and you can find it that way. But I also do a blood test which looks for mercury as well, and that's for more current exposure. And it can give you a sense of it if you're eating too much. The silver fillings is a different story, and I do advocate moving your way through the quadrants of your mouth, and I tell people, like, every 6 months maybe do a different quadrant. um, some people believe that most of the mercury is already gone and leached out of there by the time it's old, if you've had it 20-30 years from your childhood. And there are holistic dentists who can actually test that if it's leaking and leaching, and help you remove them and replace them. Your regular dentist can do it as well. They just need to use like a dental dam and high-speed suction. There's just a way to do it. But I do advocate getting all the silver fillings out. Unfortunately, you're going to get glue and ceramic, and there's other toxins you're going to get exposed to when you get dental work of any kind, which is just hard and unfortunate, and no way around that. But this is why then you take some detox supplements and you take some extra N-acetylcysteine, and these are things we're going to recommend you do over the long term as an ongoing kind of support. And there's ways to just support your system while you do these things. So that's my little that's my little pitch about mercury as its own issue. And so we do and so I do chelation in the office. I do oral chelation. But I always do 3 months of just what you're doing for the next 2 weeks. I always do 3 months of basic liver support before I'll ever chelate anybody. And I'll retest after the 3 months, limit the fish exposure, like really cut back on fish to like once a week, do 3 months of liver support detox work, and then retest. And most of the time the mercury levels are way down at that point. So I don't end up chelating many people because doing the work this way usually works. All right, so length of treatment. So the lifestyle changes I'm talking about are permanent, right? The food sensitivities, well, that's sort of coming out of the gut now, and you've been doing the elimination diet. We'll talk more about how long until you reintroduce the food. I would not reintroduce, obviously, any food till you're completely done with our program, and we're going to talk more about that in 2 weeks when I meet with you. So I'm going to leave that for then. But I usually tell people for the worst foods that you're sensitive to wait until till you're like 6 months, till you've made substantial progress with treating leaky gut. In terms of the detox supplements, this is what I just said to you about the 3 months of the core supplements. I think we all make a big mistake under treating. Nobody's going to cure a toxin load by doing a 2-week detox program. It's just not going to work. It's just not. I mean, think about it. It makes no sense. I've had my sickest people I've had for a year on supporting detox, because I know from doing their whole history, I know the toxin load and their exposures were huge, and that toxins are their main issue. And so this is an ongoing problem. And so you have to be aware of undertreating. So the take-home lessons are: always evaluate your toxin load, always work to clean up your environment and food. The environment's really important too. One of the things that we do to try to assess toxin load is the MSQ, which is the Medical Symptom Questionnaire. And I'm pretty sure you're going to do that if you haven't already in coaching for the detox program, or Melissa does it as part of coaching. But we're going to have you do the MSQ before you do the detox, and then you'll do it afterwards, and you'll see. And so the MSQ is those symptoms I was talking about like malaise and fatigue and headaches and brain fog, and to see whether or not you notice an improvement in your symptoms afterwards. Now, I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, I actually think we can wait and do infections next time. I'll show you these slides, but I would like to go back and answer some of the questions. But in terms of infections, just to keep in mind that viruses are known triggers for autoimmunity. And really what ends up happening, Epstein-Barr virus is is one of the biggest culprits that we have are well studied for its role in lupus and Epstein-Barr and turning an ANA positive. It's known to do that. So all the rheumatic diseases, Epstein-Barr ends up inside the cells. They are an intracellular. It's a virus, so it goes in the cell, and then the immune system tries to get at it in the cell and attacks the cell. And so really it's a breakdown in your own immune system's ability to clear out the virus. And so some people are handicapped in clearing out viruses, and that's the same handicap that makes them susceptible to autoimmunity. And so so testing to see if you have chronic active Epstein-Barr virus, you can look for something called the early antigen. There's a blood test you can do which has a complete Epstein-Barr panel to see whether it looks like it's ongoing active. And so my people with a positive ANA or lupus or Sjogren's or anybody with a positive ANA kind of rheumatic disease, scleroderma, polymyositis, I always check the Epstein-Barr panel. I always check people for Lyme disease, especially around here. I always send the blood to a Lyme specialty lab because they check for more species, and then I always treat Lyme. Lyme can turn an ANA positive for sure, because Lyme can be intracellular as well. So organisms that go inside the cells are the ones that can cause autoimmunity, because they cause the cell to look abnormal, and so then the body attacks it. And so you have to find and treat Lyme. And then of course mold. Mold is a huge culprit, and mold comes in from an infection, but it also the mold acts like a toxin in the body. It releases these toxins, and so as we're talking about toxins, helping the body remove the toxins to help get rid of mold toxins. In addition to just supporting the detox system, like we said, we would add on some sort of fiber or binder into the shake, or just actually not in the shake, we just do that separately. But this is a urine test that you can do. It's called a mycotoxin urine test, and you can see whether or not you have any mold toxins in your body. And if you do, the most important thing is finding and removing the mold from your house, but also then there's powdered binders that you can take to modified citrus pectin, for example, is one of them. We use something called Ultra Binder from Quicksilver, and there are things you can take to just, they're fiber, and they bind the toxins in your gut and pull it out. They actually bind as the toxins are dumped again from the liver into the bile and into the gut, and it will get recirculated if there is not fiber there to help pull it out. And so, yeah, so this is what I said. It's in your slides. You can look at it tomorrow. I gave you the name of some supplements, but we're here to help you with those questions. If you're not sure about Lyme, find somebody who knows about Lyme, and a lot of times it's a functional or integrated person like myself, or word of mouth in your community. You can find a Lyme specialist if you really think that this could be an issue for you. And then I think this is my last slide. Remember, this program is just the 4 weeks of gut, like I said, and 2 weeks of detox. And we'll talk again more about this in 2 weeks about what comes next. But my hope and my belief is that at the end of our time together, our 8-9 weeks, you're going to feel so much better, and the symptoms of your autoimmunity are going to be improved. And whether or not they're 50, 60, 80, 90, 100% improved is going to be different for all of you. And how you're going to continue with this work to continue to heal your ecosystem, to continue to heal yourself on a deeper level, to keep it going and to reverse your autoimmunity, that's going to take some time. But it's not going to be as intensive as this time, but it's going to be a long-term plan for how you're going to finish what you started. And then with intermittently, you're going to need to do some more extra, like therapeutic detox programs, therapeutic gut programs every 4 to 6 months in sort of an ongoing intermittent way until you get where you want to go. And I'm hoping that I really made that clear for you, but that's also in these slides. And so next steps, this week you're finishing the gut. This week in coaching, Melissa's going to get you ready for detox next week, and you'll do the MSQ sort of questionnaire for the pre and post detox. In 2 weeks, now remember, send in your questions ahead of time. This will be my last class that I'll be teaching you in 2 weeks. So if you send in really all the questions you have, for me, things that Melissa knows, can't answer, or you want me to answer, I will put them up in the slides, and we will talk about them as part of the as part of my class. And so that's really my goal for that. Okay, and so let's come back. Good. And so I'm back. Let's see. It's just 9 o'clock. So I'll just take a quick look at the questions and see if there's anything, and I'll answer a few questions before we go. It looks like, well, how do you know if your gut is healed? And that's really about your symptoms. If you're with an integrated person, we can do testing to look at the leaky gut markers. But for you, it's really just if your food sensitivities are gone, or you can tolerate foods better, your symptoms are improved. What is the stool test and how can you take it? Melissa answered you on that. We talked about that already. Good. If you have constipation, does it mean that the gut's not healed properly? It means that you still well, if you have constipation, it's one of two things. You're eating foods that are causing constipation. So it could be food related. It could also be microbiome related. But constipation can also be motility related. And so some people with chronic constipation have a lot of stress. And sometimes, like if you meditate in the mornings, you'll find you're going to start moving your bowels, because you'll engage the parasympathetic system, and you'll have relaxation. And parasympathetic actually helps motility, whereas the stress system, sympathetic stress turn on, inhibits your motility. And so it also could be a stress problem. And so we work on all those fronts. And so if you're doing the full elimination diet, you've probably removed the foods, because dairy and gluten and eggs and, some of those, and for me, soy, some things can really cause people to be constipated. Eating enough fiber. So the food piece is really important. The gut dysbiosis, if you've noticed it's gotten better while using these herbs, then you're on the right track, and you might need more gut treatment. So it could be microbiome, it could be yeast in your gut, which by getting rid of the sugar from your diet and doing this treatment, I'm hoping that should be improving. And again, stress and motility. And so you could also try, the other thing is you could have low digestive enzyme power, and so one of the things you could try as a fourth bucket is taking digestive enzymes, which are in the packets that I use for our gut treatment. So you have to sort of work your way through that. How do you test for mold and mercury? Well, we vary a whole bunch of ways. I told you about that already. I told you about both. Mold testing in your home, you actually have to hire someone to come in and swipe your house and look for mold. The mycotoxin test, is a urine test looking for mold mycotoxin. And we got all that, the dental amalgams, eliminating red meat. What is a good food source to get adequate amount of B vitamins? If you're talking about B12, if you've become a vegan, unless you're a vegan, then you don't have to, you really are going to get B12 if you're eating some food, and it's not even just red meat. But most people need to take a B12 vitamin, especially as we get older. We don't do well absorbing the B12 from food. And so I am a big advocate of sublingual B12. And there's a great article like in Time Magazine a year or two ago, just talking about general pervasive B12 deficiency in older folks. And so I think B12 is just a good thing to have. In general, all the rest of the B vitamins are all in vegetables. You have no problem with Bs. So chemical sensitivities, yes, Rhonda. If you really have, well, there's two ways to think about it. When you have a very high toxin load, you can be just in overload, and anything is a tipping point for you, and you can't manage any toxins. And so multiple chemical sensitivities can definitely be from too many toxins. On the other side of the spectrum, when you're clean, like I am, like I've really cleaned up my world, I have very little exposure to toxins, people, you can then also become very sensitive. And part of that is because the enzymes that you use that the liver's using get quiet. And so they're called inducible enzymes. as the more toxins you have, the more enzyme activity there is, and they're trying to keep up. If you've been really, really clean for a long time and then you get exposed, the enzymes aren't working. They're like, they've been quiet, they're dormant a little bit. So you can feel really toxic very easily. And so there's both ends of the spectrum that can cause people to feel symptoms very quickly from exposure. You will know for yourself which end of that spectrum you are on right now. But yeah, that's true. So what were the testing through IGenics you spoke about in the mess? Is that part of the challenge? The testing through IGenics, that's the Lyme test. IGenics is a lab in California that we use to send our blood to for our patients. IGenics tests for every Lyme different species because there's many different species of Lyme, and your local lab might only test for the species in your immediate area, whereas now we know that there's worldwide, there's, I don't know, 20 Lyme species now or something, but and I'm sure I have that number wrong, but there's more than the 2 that my New York lab court tests for. And so yeah. So IGenics test it is for the Lyme testing. Detox starts on Tuesday, Melissa says, and yes, you can test for Epstein-Barr virus after having a positive. Once it shows negative, yeah. So Epstein-Barr virus, once you've ever had Epstein-Barr, there's a panel of 4 tests that you get when you go. You should ask for all 4. There's something called the VCA and the EBNA. Those 2 are positive forever. But they could be really high positive or low positive, but it's sort of like an immunization. If you've ever had it, those will always forever be positive. But the other 2, one's called an IgM and the other's called the EA, which is called the early antigen. If either of those are positive, then the concern is that it's sort of chronic reactivated. And so it can be, that's when I know that I'm concerned there's a problem. For some people, even the other 2, if they're really, really high, like greater than 800, really big numbers, then the concern is that there is a high viral load in the body that's causing that. And then I'm still somewhat concerned about it. And so let me see the question. After having a positive Epstein-Barr virus blood test, once it shows negative, see, like I said, two out of those 4 will never be negative. Does the body still hold on to the negative effects of having had a test? Well, the virus, it'll never be negative. You are going to have that virus in your body the rest of your life. But your immune system is supposed to get really strong and able to make it go dormant and put it in remission. Think of it like remission. Epstein-Barr virus is supposed to go into remission and become quiet in the body and have no activity. The immune system shouldn't see it anymore. It should not be replicating. It just goes dormant. The problem is under conditions like a severe stressor or something happens or another virus, you get Lyme, and then it wakes up the Epstein-Barr virus, and you have double problem because the EBV is active as well as the Lyme. And so that when there's a stressor to the immune system, you can get reawakening of the Epstein-Barr. So the problem is for us practitioners, we're always trying to figure out, is the Epstein-Barr active or not? Do we think it's doing something? And it's very, very hard for us to know. And so I just always assume that it's there, that it could be a problem. And I'm always working this program that we're doing, the Immune System Recovery Plan, the 4-step program. It's a 4-step program to a healthy immune system. And so by working with food, by working on stress, helping you have tools to manage your stress, by healing your gut, by lowering your toxin load, your immune system should behave in a more healthy way to help you keep your Epstein-Barr virus in remission. And so that, to me, having a healthy immune terrain, working on the long-term balancing of your ecosystem, that's the best insurance you have of keeping the viruses at bay and in remission so that they won't trigger autoimmunity and they won't make you sick. So that's actually, it was a good way to end this talk with that question, because it's a very relevant and important question. Okay, and so we're going to wrap up and I'm going to end. Seriously, you've got me one more session, so send in your questions. We're going to really talk next time about stress a little bit more, to mind-body tools, the importance of creating a long-term plan for living the rest of your life after this program's over. Good luck with your detox. I hope you enjoy it. Be very, very mindful about what you notice about your symptoms and how you feel and how that changes in the course of the program. Okay? So good night, everyone. Good to see you. Happy fall. Enjoy not Thanksgiving. I'll see you before Thanksgiving. I was going to say enjoy Halloween. No candy. I live in the woods, so nobody comes to visit me. I don't have to buy any candy. Be careful about that. It's a big trigger for a lot of people. See you soon. Okay, bye.